This is in response to the Cubase Academy Facebook page. Somebody was asking me questions about their machine locking up. They sent me a picture of their CPU bar just pegged. And, well, let's do that. I have actually emulated that exact scenario where my CPU is pegged. I'm not even playing anything, and my average load is very high. If I play this track now, it's going to sound terrible. Hopefully, I'll turn it down so it doesn't blow out your speakers, but it's going to sound bad. I bet even the metronome can't keep up. That's not too bad. All right. Now I'm only playing 3 MIDI tracks. I have 2 VST instruments loaded. I have a Halion 6, which is playing a piano, a string, and a synth, okay? That arpeggiator. And I have another piano loaded just so I can play it here for latency purposes. Like right now when I play it, yeah, it sounds terrible, but the response is fantastic. Feels good. So let's take a look at my settings. Oh, and by the way, before we start, my processor is a Xeon E3 1275, not the latest Xeon by any stretch of the imagination, running at 3.5 gigahertz. So it's 4 core, 8 virtual total. So it's a decent processor. It's liquid cooled. We've got 16 gig of RAM, and we're running off SSDs, right? So there's going to be no drive issues here. So why so bad? Well, if I go to my studio setup, I know Alt-D doesn't seem logical, but for those of you that have been using Cubase a while, you know that used to be devices, and Alt-D made sense. It stays. It's locked into my muscle memory, right? Alt-D. So in here we can see we have our devices screen, and at the bottom you'll have your VST audio device, and this is where you choose the device you want to use. I could use, and this applies to all the devices, right? If I'm using my Machine 3 or my Focusrite input or whatever I'm using, right? Right now I happen to be using a Steinberg USB, which is my 8 input device here. Actually, it has 24 inputs. It's light pipe, but I'm not using any of that. It's just a straight input right now. And I don't have ASIO guard on. I'm going to leave that off for the moment. But if I go into my actual driver, here's all my ins and outs, and I look at my control panel, it's going to look different depending on the device you choose, right? Really important. I am down at 64 samples, which is the lowest I can choose on this interface, which is about 4.5 milliseconds. Input 4.5 and output 5.5 milliseconds, which is why when I play the piano, it feels so good. I mean, it's real time. The human brain has a hard time sensing anything less than 6 milliseconds, right? At least my human brain is barely. So let's see what happens if I double the sample rate to 128. Bring up F12, by the way, brings up this meter here. It's pegging, but not quite as hard. It's probably still going to sound bad when I play the piano. Not as bad. It still feels good. Still feels. Sometimes I'll use the pad. You can feel the latency better when you're striking a pad. But it feels real time to me. But if I play these tracks, I bet it's horrible. Yeah. So if I just want to play a track, as long as I don't play too many notes, I bet I could get this to bottom out. Yeah, there it goes. I need to take it up a little more, right? So go to the control panel. And let's go all the way to 512. Okay, that's a much better picture, right? Let me see how the piano feels. It's just, it feels a little squishy. It's weird because we didn't change anything mechanical, but it feels softer. It doesn't feel as sharp. If I play the tracks, that's really not bad. Okay, so let's look at my meter. Yeah, I'm right there though. So now if I want to add piano in, already it's taxing the system again, right? So what can I do? What if I want low latency to play, and I need the system not to go crackly like that? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. Let's say that I wanted to keep my latency to 256, and that was my acceptable feel for my piano. Probably okay. What I have to do is, here, I can either say, well, what's the minimum tracks I need to actually play along with, right? Suppose I didn't need the arp synth and the strings. Then I can right-click and I can disable them for now, right? But it doesn't stop the fact that we'll still have this VST loaded, right? It's still taking the overhead. Let's look at our meter. Okay, let's play along with just the piano track. So if I had a metronome, that might be okay, right? So I've temporarily disabled those tracks. And then when I'm ready to, I can just re-enable them. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to press F11, which brings up the tracks and racks window, right? Anything above this line is a track, anything below is a rack. It applies across, it applies both ways. I'm not going to get into what the difference is here, but look what I can do. I can come to the Halion 6 and I can freeze it. Now that's going to freeze all my Halion 6 tracks that are coming from that instrument, okay? So some choices here: freeze instrument only, or I can freeze everything including the channel. But if I want to put effects on the channel or change things about the channel, I do not want to freeze the channel. So let's leave the channel alone and only freeze the instrument. The tail size doesn't matter in this case because I'm looping. But if you're going to freeze a whole track and it's got some room or some verb or acoustic tails, you need to account for that in the freeze. It doesn't matter. It's going to sound weird because I'm looping, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to also unload the instrument when it's frozen, because when it's frozen, I don't need the instrument, right? So here we go. I'm going to freeze it. It's actually rendering audio tracks right now. Okay? And there, the Halion 6 is frozen. You can't do anything. You can't do anything with it. And the tracks are locked. You cannot edit them. Okay? If you're curious, no, the rendered files are not in the group, the pool. They're not there. But let's see what happens if I play the track now. I still can play my piano because it's not rendered, right? It's still VST. And it's not crackling or anything. So I'm able now to record my tracks because my instruments are frozen while I record. That's fantastic. So there's one option. Now if I record that piano, let's record a little piano. Didn't plan on doing this. I'm probably asking for trouble. I'm just going to record a couple of bars of this piano here. Okay, good enough. So, right. Another option I have is to take the track that I just recorded and do what's called render in place. Okay. This track, I can say I would like to transfer the channel settings, the complete signal path, or the signal and master path. So any reverbs and anything that's in the path will be recorded with this, rendered with this. I'm just going to do the channel settings, okay? Tail size in seconds. Again, doesn't matter. We're looping, okay? But I could add a tail in here and say, yeah, it needs to be 5 seconds, right? And I don't need to give it a name. I don't need to do anything else. And here I can say, do I want to keep the source events or mute them? I want to mute them. I don't want them to play after they're rendered. So let's go ahead and render this. New audio track here that represents my piano. Okay, and notice my piano is muted. Okay, let's look at my meter. It's still way under. Things look great. No crackles, no dropouts. So that's another effective way, the render in place. You can also do, I could have done that another way. You can do it with the media export window. In fact, if you do this media export audio mixdown, I could pick the piano track, and it's here, VST piano. And I can say export that to whatever my format is here in my project, okay? Put it in an audio track, not in any folder, okay? Well, watch, this is actually a neat trick. I'll show you. No, post-process, close the window, okay. VST piano is the only one I'm interested in. All right, here we go. Export. This track, move it to the project, and I must not have had something checked. However, if I checked all my boxes properly, never go off the script, ever, then this would have rendered the piano track. Now I'm annoyed. So what happened? Okay. It was muted. That was a test. Did you get it? Yeah? So let's take off the mute. Sorry. I could just edit this out. Is it worth it? All right, let's do that again. My shortcut is Alt Control X. I'm going to go ahead and make sure VST piano is selected. And I just want to, well, I don't want all the tracks. I only want one. So turn off batch. Okay. You could also, in the latest version of Cubase, I think 9 did this. I know 9.5 does it because I'm in 9.5 right now. You can make a marker track, right? So this, I can select it. Here it's already selected. I can do a Control M to bring up my marker window. I could add a insert cycle marker, call it piano. Okay, there it is. And now when I go to my export window, I can actually export piano as just from a cycle marker. It will ignore this up here, whatever I have checked. So even if I have main out, it won't do it. It'll export this piano into the pool, into an audio track, in a folder called rendered piano. And I'm going to do it right now. Okay, there. So there it is. There's my rendered. Oh, it rendered nice and loud too, more than this one. So if I mute this one here and play. Both tracks are playing. There's the one that I rendered as a cycle. Here's the one I rendered in place. And if we look at our meter, you know, again, everything's playing from audio right now, even though you have MIDI tracks, right? So when it came time to do some playback and do some editing, I may want to bring up my Helion 6 and unfreeze my tracks, which now makes my MIDI editable again. Oh, by the way, if you don't do a render in place, it doesn't mute the MIDI track. So we were actually listening to a MIDI version and 2 audio versions. Lots of piano were going on there. So now if I play, it might get crackles back again. Right. But because I'm done recording, there's no harm in me going into my control panel and making my latency ridiculous. Right? I wouldn't want to try to record with this kind of latency. It would be awful. So now I've got my tracks unfrozen. Let's see what happens. It's fine. I can play it back because I've made the buffer huge. Doesn't matter in the playback, right? I mean, I've never had any issue with this. I just know that if I'm going to record and I need low latency and I've got a lot of tracks, there are just some things I have to do to compensate for that. You know, short of upgrading your system, you know, putting a 10-core Xeon in here or whatever, or even offloading the VST processors, right? There's multiple ways to do that with cards you can insert or external boxes, but it's expensive. Okay, anyway, and that's the other thing. Make sure there's no other superfluous processes running, things you don't need, shut them down. If you're running background processes by Adobe or by Dropbox or Google Drive or all these things that take up processing, shut them down. Don't run them. Go into your startup configuration and disable them. I run them when I need them. This is primarily an audio workstation, but I do a lot of file transfer, and it's a pain to do it, you know, without an internet connection. So anyway, thanks for watching. I know this was long, but I hope it was worth it. If you made it this far, congratulations. And I hope it was helpful. I really do. I know this is a tricky subject, and there are multiple ways to fix stuff. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you. I won't see you. You'll see me next time.